And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Talk podcast. I'm your host, Harris Arena. Alongside me, co-host Dan Kiley. Episode 129 of the Talk. On this beautiful Monday evening. I know we've been all over in recent terms, in terms of when we do this show, but it is Monday. We are back on our regular scheduled day. If you want to look at it that way, I have just become aware as I hit the live button that this is not going to my Twitter feed for some reason, and I don't know why. It says premium account on X is required to create live broadcasts on their platform. I have that, so looks like we will not be live on Twitter tonight. Which does suck because Twitter does bring in some of our audience. So for those of you who do listen on Twitter regularly, please
I have it.
migrate over.
I have Twitter
You have it.
Premium.
You'll have to sign in and send it as a destination to here. But we won't worry about that right now. I'll get that squared away. I did just change my profile picture on Twitter, so my account is under review to make sure I'm not breaking any of their parity requirements. But that's probably, I'm assuming that's what's going on right now. So we apologize to those people. Dan, we have a loaded show on another big week for Georgia in this platform. Georgia plays Texas on Saturday in, I guess, the second of potentially maybe 3 or 4 when you look at Georgia's schedule. Game of the year candidates. Dan, I have a stat for you that I'm going to bring to you later on in the night when we get into the Texas preview. Thank you to Cole Kublik for tweeting this out. I thought that was a pretty interesting note that he put out there in terms of Georgia's schedule and how it pertains to this Texas matchup. But first, we have 2 hot topics tonight. Dan, number 1, what rule would you like to add to football that would improve the game?
So this is actually kind of funny. And why do you always make me go ice? Dang it. So it was funny because Cannon and I were watching the game, and I was talking. We were watching actually an NFL game, and it was one of the DBs, and Cannon calls it ankle biting. When the tight end caught the ball, he went right, chopped right below his knees, went right at the shin bone to make the tackle. And I said, when I played, that's the one thing I hated about being a big tight end was that they would immediately go for your knees. And like, if you've ever been hit like that, it absolutely sucks. And if you think about it, if you just do it wrong, like just a split second, if your foot gets caught, you could snap your shin bone. And then Cannon was talking about in the games, every time he gets on the edge running the football, the corners always want to hit him below the knees because he's bigger, he's taller. And he's like, I absolutely hate it. And then if you think about all the guys that tear ACLs, blow out their knees, break shin bones, tibias, fibias, and then you've got, I know that's not how he did it, but the Aiden Hutchinson blowing out or breaking his tibia or whatever in the game. But for me, and I preface this by saying I know that we've added way too many tackling rules, and it's like, well, how the hell are you supposed to tackle anybody now? But like the horse collar one makes 100% sense to me. The hip toss one, I'm not really on board with that one, and they haven't really enforced it, and I don't think they know how to enforce it. But I really think the diving at the shins has got to go, and I think that will eliminate a lot of injuries. That's not tackling, dude. That's if you're diving with your helmet or your shoulder pad at somebody's shins. I know I hated it when I played. I know Cannon hates it, and I don't know where you stand on it, but I would love to see that go. I just think it's a really dangerous play in football. And I'm not trying to be like a wuss or anything like that. And like I said, I already know that there's too many tackling rules, but I hate that one. Absolutely hate that one. I hate that one more than the horse collar, to be honest with you.
So I have 2 ones. One of them was what I texted you about in the low-hanging fruit / like easy answer, and that I wanted a flagrant system to my targeting fouls, to my targeting penalties in college football. I don't know how you do it. I don't know if you do it by, hey, this is his first targeting penalty, he's going to stay in the game. If he does it again, he's gone. Or if you do it by some subjective ruling in terms like, hey, that's egregious. Yes, Dan.
Like the NBA flagrant 1, flagrant 2. Like that was accidental. He didn't mean to do that. He stays in the game. Or 100% that was a bad targeting. He's gone. Yeah, flagrant 1,
Yeah.
flagrant 2 targeting. Understood.
I love that. I love that. But that's not really, I don't know if we will count that as a new rule. It's funny where you went with this because I had, for the different side of the ball in terms of diving at knees, I hate the cutting of defensive linemen. We saw it happen to Jalen Carter in that Mizzou game where he gets cut and he's out for like 4 weeks. I think it is.
It's just dirty.
It is. And it's, sometimes, most of the times, there's no ill will behind it. It's just what the play calls for, and you're gonna cut the guy, and that's what you got to do. But I think if we're going to limit tackling and how you can tackle guys, then maybe we should add in some more, rules that are favorable to protecting the health of the defensive linemen and the defense themselves. So, hey, we already have a rule for chop blocks. Not allowed to do them. Not allowed to chop him. You're only allowed to dive at his knees when you're coming straight at him. Not able to do it diagonally or anything like that. Well, let's go ahead and add another rule. No more cutting in general. Just sucks. I don't want to see people blow out their knees, especially that offensive lineman who just look at the recent amount of knee injuries and leg injuries we've had on defensive linemen since, they've gotten bigger over the years. Let's get another rule in there to help protect them as well. If we're going to do it for offense, let's do it for defense as well. Dan, hot topic number 2. We are halfway through this new season. There's a lot of note. There's the college football playoff with the expansion, and there's also conference realignment. We got West Coast teams playing on the East Coast. We got East Coast teams playing on the West Coast in conference games. We got Texas playing in a top 5 matchup at home versus Georgia. This is their first top 5 game at home since 2006. What do you say halfway through the season? How do we feel about this conference realignment era of college football?
I'm absolutely digging it right now. All right, so there is so much talent in the Big Ten, and there's so much talent in the SEC that you're starting to see parity like you've never seen before. I mean, you got Michigan getting drugged. Now, granted, they lost. They had 22 or 23 super seniors on that national championship team. So them stepping back is not a shocker. Then you have a team like Ohio State that went out and bought everything. I mean, straight up bought the best team money could buy, and they go out to Oregon and lose. So, you've got teams that can disrupt the apple cart, so to speak, in the Big Ten, where it's not Michigan and Ohio State, and then nobody else can contend. Now you've got a couple teams in there. Now, listen, with Penn State, I'm just gonna tell you, at some point Penn State's gonna lose because they're never as good as they seem to be. But then in the Big Ten or in the SEC, you've got Vanderbilt, and I know this, I'm stealing your thunder here, with Vanderbilt winning football games now, and you've got just parity across the league. I don't think that anybody could come out here today other than Texas, who looks really, really good right now. I don't know that there's a team in the SEC that's just so much above everybody else. And I think that's probably because of so much talent that they've brought in the conference. Yeah, so I like it. I think the parity is good. Now, on the backside of that, what you have some really shitty conferences now. ACC is absolutely garbage, horrible. ACC is horrible. The Big 12 is not great. The Pac-10 doesn't even exist. So I mean, it's ruined the rest of college football, but for the 2 main conferences is great. And I mean, we both know, Harrison, this is leading towards 2026 AFC, NFC. That's what it's going to be. The Big Ten is going to have 20 teams. The SEC is going to have 20 teams. And then everything else is going to be basically Division II at that point. That's where they're headed. The rules change in 2026. That'll be the first year. The current format ends in 2025. So I say just enjoy it while you can. But I don't hate it, man. I know I just give a really long answer to a really short question, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
To me, I'm with you. I mean, from an entertainment standpoint, to a outsider's perspective, if you don't know what college football is, or not a close follower of college football, if you're just a casual, you're just one of those NFL fans who's always subscribed to the theory of, hey, NFL is the pro league, it's the better league. I don't want to watch that college stuff. Well, there's never a better time to watch college football than right now. Because like Dan said, there's more parity across the board. You got Vanderbilt, who is perennially over the last decade the worst team in the SEC, beating what's perennially been over the last 10 years the best team in the SEC, maybe the best team, probably the best program in all of college football in Alabama last week. That doesn't happen very often. And by very often, I mean pretty much ever. Vanderbilt is 1-60, I believe it is, against top 5 teams. Well, that one win came against Alabama. So, like Dan said, I like it from that perspective in terms of entertainment. It is nice to have the weekends like we just had where you have Texas and Oklahoma facing off on a week where Ohio State and Oregon play on the same week. And then even this coming week, you'll have Texas, Georgia, on the same weekend as Tennessee, Alabama. I mean, really entertaining slates. It's almost like it's kind of like the NFL, although it's not exactly like the NFL because the NFL will does a really good job of slotting its games. They won't have, just keeping college terms, they won't have Georgia and Texas play competing at the same time slot as, say, Tennessee or Auburn and whoever. Just like your biggest draws aren't always competing. College football is starting to get better about that, especially in the SEC with ESPN having all the games on the SEC. They do a really good job of slotting those back to back. You got a doubleheader this coming Saturday night. You're going to go straight from Tennessee, Alabama straight to Texas, Georgia. That's going to be elite. I love the slates of it. I know, Dan, you've been busy mostly on Saturdays for the past few years, but this Saturday, you got to watch from sun up to sundown.
9 a.m. I was locked in for game day, and I did not get off the couch until 12:30 a.m. And my wife let me watch college football the entire day. It was great football all day long, game after game after game. It was entertaining. She even came down and watched football with me because it was like the first time in forever that we had time off together. And we were watching the South Carolina-Alabama game, and she was rooting for them. And then we watched the Georgia game. Obviously, you know what we were doing there. But then it blew my mind. So if you don't believe in the power of College Game Day, okay, listen, this is a free advertising for College Game Day. If you don't believe in the power, Allison watched that with me, and she saw the Dan Lanning story about his wife battling cancer, designing the uniforms, the whole nine, the whole thing, the cancer battle. Instant Oregon fan. I'm talking about we were watching that game against Ohio State, and she was screaming, yelling, rooting for Oregon like her life depended on it. So if you don't believe in the power of ESPN and Game Day, my wife, who watches no sports, was locked in as an Oregon fan. So, I mean, she might be buying Oregon shit this week. I don't know.
There's a couple Sco Ducks said in that Cali household over the weekend. Dan, transitioning into Dan's rant. I told you pre-show, when we tick it over to you, we wouldn't say you're angry about it. Because I don't know. Well, let me not say that. Because there are people apparently angry about anything these days. Dan, there's been an interesting conversation ever since Kirby Smart brought it up at the podium about Georgia's atmosphere, about the fan base itself, about being able to cheer on their team and doing it at an elite level. I wanted to kick it over to you because we had a conversation in our private chat today about the atmosphere. And I think we all came to consensus of, hey, yes, Georgia can have a much better game day experience. But where the disagreements, laid was, hey, what should be kept and what should be changed? So I kind of want to get your take on where exactly you stand on all this. Because right now, we got a fan base that is at each other's throats, which is crazy considering Georgia's a one-loss football team with a chance to upset the number one football team in the nation this coming Saturday.
Yeah, I think the issues are completely different, right? We're talking about one is a football issue where I think a lot of people are upset that we're not as explosive they want us to be. We're not as dominant as we have been, right? So that's one part of the issue. The second part of the issue is the noise in the stadium. And I have my own thoughts, and then I am mature enough in my life that I can hear what you're saying and then meld them together with what I'm thinking. And so this is where I'm kind of at with it right now. Like you had the Spike Squad calling out the fraternity squad, talking about they're more interested in just getting drunk and they show up late and leave at halftime. They're not there. And to be completely honest, they're not really fans. Okay. They're at the school. They're fraternity guys. I've been in a fraternity, Theta Chi, hey, in the house. So I'm not disrespecting fraternities, but a lot of those kids in fraternities, man, all they are interested in is getting really friggin' hammered. Back in the day, it used to be go tailgate, get hammered, and you go make a lot of noise at the ball game, so much so that you either pass out or throw up everywhere. I don't know. But, it's like this generation shift is completely different. These kids are different. The attitude is different. Um, it it all goes back to eliminating a lot of the area that's tailgate, right? So now it's almost like the tailgating at Georgia is sponsored in some type of way. It's very select areas where you can, and then people buy out areas, and it's like it's real corporate, right? It's not how it used to be. It used to be you get there for a 1 o'clock or a noon game. You get there at 5:30 in the morning. You start setting up your tailgate. We had a spot. I can't think of the name of the road right now. We had a spot in front of a parking deck that we used to go all the time. But you can't tailgate there anymore. And then there was a place over by the railroad tracks that we used to tailgate. There was like a big field over there back in the day. It's probably got a damn building on it now. But it was a big field, and we had this one guy that would bring his camper, put his camper up and post it up. We have TV running off of it. He had bathrooms. Everybody would bring food. It was a great day. And listen, don't get me wrong. There are some guys who still tailgate and everything. It's just not what it used to be. When I was in college, you would go and people would tailgate all day long, and you would have, I don't know, just tailgates everywhere. That is not true at all, Stoddard. You shut your damn mouth with that shit. It was just a great time, and the whole thing was leading up to the game, right? You would have probably 200,000 people out there tailgating for only 90 something thousand to get in. The rest of them would stay out there tailgate and party, and then when the game was over, you would go out there and the party would continue all night long. It's not that way anymore. And then the environment in the stadium, the music's not great, right? We all agree the music's not great, even though y'all like Baba O'Reilly, and I don't think it gets anybody juiced up. It's just, and Jonathan said, and this is, I think this is the best part. I think he nailed it. It's welcome the 1998 swim team, or the president, or the professor who won some award that we don't give a shit about. It's like all the momentum in the stadium just evaporates immediately when that happens. Nobody's getting fired up about that. And Jeremiah and you and everybody else were talking about maybe bring Ladd McConkey out there to get hype in the middle of the game, or bring out this guy or that guy, or bring out a dog that's recent, or hell, have Quavo try to get the fans hyped up in the middle of the game. But like they sap all the energy out with bad music, downtimes in the game. The executive Coca-Cola is out there with a bunch of guys in suits, and this is the truth. And I'm going to be as delicate as I could possibly be. I told Harrison it was coming. The biggest problem that Georgia has is the majority of the people in the stands are very old. And I'm not talking about old like me. I'm talking about like 70 years old. They don't make noise. They don't stand up. They get very angry if you stand up. They don't want the music. They don't want the loud. And until they're not a part of the equation, it's going to be very hard to change the atmosphere at UGA. And for anybody saying that's not true, then you haven't been to a game and sat in a good seat. If you go to a Georgia game, you sit in anything that resembles a good seat, you are surrounded by people who are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. It's just facts. It's just facts.
Certainly a clash of generations right there. Like there is no bigger difference in between what the college student wants and what you said, the guys that were college students back in the 50s and 60s and all that. Shout out to the class of 98. Dan might have been a part of that class. I'm not sure exactly, but I assume he was, considering what he said in our chat earlier this morning. Yeah, okay. Apparently Jeremiah's paying for bail. Only get up for the big games. They don't get. Jeremiah Sauter says, I think Georgia fans only get up for the big games. They don't get excited when the spread is 30. And that's the problem right now. Almost every game Georgia plays is going to be a 30-point spread unless they're playing, like Jeremiah said, a big game.
And I think you also said something that was pretty relevant, was that here lately the home schedule, if it wasn't you, if it was somebody else, I apologize, but I thought it was you, saying the home schedule hasn't been good in a while. And that's definitely a factor. But
It's
I think
particularly awful this year, other than Tennessee. Like,
I
there's
think
one home game a year that's really good.
right, and
You
I
know,
think we all agree that something's got to give. But I mean, honestly, the main issue is age of the fans. You have, and we had a name for them, the Blue Hairs. Um, if that stadium is packed with Blue Hairs, it's not going to be that loud. And that was, if you think, you can think back 3 or 4 years ago, we had an argument amongst ourselves where I said that outside of a handful of games, Georgia's not an intimidating place to play. You guys fried me on that one, and it's rearing its ugly head again.
then Kirby came out and said, yeah, he can't get a threatening stadium the other week. If the fans don't get up for home games next year, then they don't deserve to go to games. Yeah, I mean, with next year's home slate, if Sanford Stadium's not one of the most electric atmospheres of college football, there's not only a big problem within that, or like within the people that run the stadium, but also within the fan base itself. Jeremiah Stoddard, as always, nailing it there. Look at the profile picture over there, bro. Never, ever takes a bad photo. Always has the hair just
He's
perfect.
skinny.
Yeah, just always
Skinny,
great.
skinny guys always take good pictures. It's just a fact.
Damn. All
Look
right.
how fat my face is. You think I'd take a good picture ever?
Hey, we can get
I
some
was
good pictures.
born for radio.
We can get some big pictures. I'll tell you off show what makes me laugh about that, because I remember a moment me and you had on the radio. Well, actually not on the radio, but before a radio broadcast we did together. Anyways, Dan, let's talk about this past weekend's game, because God, it's crazy to say this, but Saturday was a tale of two halves. In all aspects of it. I mean, Georgia played probably its best first half of the year that I can remember. 27 points, the most points they scored against a P5 team in the first half all year long. And it looked like Georgia was getting ready to roll. And as Kirby Smart said, getting ready to actually just like cut it all loose and just play without fear. It was looking like it was going to be just one of those, I say old fashioned, but when I say old fashioned, I'm talking about 2-3 years ago. Just blowouts. Just Georgia comes in, dominates, sends a statement, boom, next page. But that's not what happened. We got Georgia dominated for a half, and then you have some momentum shift. Carson throws a pick on, I want to say it was the first drive of the second half, on what probably would have been the put-away drive. If that turns into a touchdown, I think it definitely does. I think the momentum probably doesn't swing as much as it did in Mississippi State's favor. And you look up triple zeros, and it's a 10-point ball game against what I believe is one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in the SEC, in Mississippi State. What's your feeling?
Did you hear Carson talk about that interception that he threw in the end zone?
I did not.
So all we saw was the TV copy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be interested to see whenever you guys get the all 22 or whatever. Carson said that he said that the DB grabbed a hold of the receiver and pulled him back and jumped and got in front of him that way. So like it was a really egregious pass interference. So whenever you guys see that, let me know. Was that on your show last night, Jeremiah? It might have been on Jeremiah's show where I heard about that. And if it is, I apologize, and I'm going to give you credit because I remember. I for some reason I was thinking it was on the radio today, but maybe it was Jeremiah saying it last night. But and that's the problem with watching everybody else's show. All the information runs together. But yeah, he said it was bad. So I'll be interested to know if that's true or not. But yeah, you know what I've realized? I was watching the show, or I was watching the game, and there are throws that we have guys running wide open and Carson won't make, right? He'll underthrow it, overthrow it, or whatever. We'll have, guys not make a play here or there, a guy drop a ball. I have realized that I've become so spoiled watching this football team that I expect perfection. It's like I have developed into this type of person that cannot handle if something's not done perfectly. Like, I almost expect Carson Beck to go 36 of 36 and complete every damn pass, and everything needs to be perfect. And that's not realistic because I will get so angry when there's a receiver running wide freaking open and he underthrows the ball or, puts it out of bounds or, it's like I just realized that this past game because I was watching the Ole Miss or the Mississippi State game, and I realized I expect him to be perfect. I don't do that when I watch any other game. I don't do that when I watch an NFL game. And I don't know where it comes from or why I feel that way. It's just and I think the reason I'm bringing that up is because I think that there was a lot of UGA fans that have also um, moved over to this way of thinking where they expect him to be absolutely perfect. And that's not realistic. And I have some other thoughts too. So don't make sure you come back this way. But um, I think that's the biggest problem that I have with the game is that I watched it through the eyes of I expect him to be freaking perfect.
And that's the hard thing about when we talk about complete games, because obviously you're never going to have that quote complete game. There's always going to be errors and all that. But that's the interesting thing about this team is right now they've been inconsistent. They've been consistently inconsistent. I will say that. Some weeks, like you look at the Clemson game, they go out there and they look like the Georgia that we had come to expect over the last 2 or 3 years, going out there and I say dominate the competition. Granted, it was a slow start in the first half, but they closed out with a bang. I mean, scored, what was it? 28 points in the second half to close out that football game. Yeah, 28 points in the second half to close out that football game and make it look as dominant as they had been in the past few years against teams of that similar stature. But then you have the Kentucky game, a 1-point win. You have the Bama game where Georgia played the worst half of football that I've ever seen. I spoke to somebody today that said it was the worst half football they've watched since the Jim Donnan days of Georgia football. And then, you kind of have 2 back-to-back results where Georgia looks like they're going to steamroll their opponent and, either that next gear isn't really hit or something just happens. And I don't know where this one falls. It looks like to me, and it's something you talked about going into this game, was we've seen Georgia, once the result kind of looks complete or looks, pretty much without a doubt that Georgia's going to win, the gas gets taken off a little bit. We start hitting the brake, and I don't know if that was that. I don't know what it was, but here's what my coworker Brent Rowland said, and it's been in my mind all day long heading into this, even through the weekend. He said there are just core DNA traits of a Kirby Smart football team typically that are missing from this team.
Agree.
One of them is finishing. They haven't finished really a game they didn't finish this game for sure.
There are certain teams that enjoy beating the hell out of people. And Georgia, once upon a time, had a team that enjoyed beating the hell out of people. And like you see, it goes across all sports, right? I mean, you can even go to rec teams, you can go to high school teams, you can go to college or pro teams. There are teams that inside of their DNA, they enjoy just beating you to death. Like the UNLV Running Rebels basketball team, they were not happy if they didn't beat you 200-1 or 200. Like they would try to absolutely take your soul. And this Georgia team doesn't have that DNA. It doesn't appear that they want to absolutely destroy people. And maybe because they just can't, right? But the other part of it is like an attitude. I don't see that nasty attitude. But and I know what we're talking about, but we mentioned it, or I did in the pregame on this one, was that in the first time in the Kirby Smart era, we see things that are uncommon, like blown assignments, right? It's not once in a blue moon. They're happening more regularly, not tackling as well. And the common excuse that's getting thrown out there is that, well, it's because they graduated all these guys and they're starting in the NFL and they just lost all this NFL talent. It's true. Absolutely, it's true. But guess what? It's college football. It's always been that way and it's never changed. It's replace. You have to replace. You only get them for 3 or 4 years and then they leave and then you have to replace them with somebody else. I do not want to hear that as an excuse. I understand that they put 400 people into the NFL. I get it. But guess what? So does every other team. How many first-round picks did Georgia have this year, Harrison?
What was it, 2?
Okay.
3?
How many first-round picks are there in the NFL draft?
32.
Okay. Well, there's 30 other teams that lost there's teams that lost 30 other first-round players. that are not on their team. They're managing to play football. Okay? The game doesn't stop because they go to the NFL. Newsflash. Every team deals with it. I understand that we have talent going to the next level. Well, that's why there's this thing called recruiting that Kirby puts a lot of time and effort into. Georgia spends a lot of money doing it to get the best players available. So when you send off the old batch to the NFL, the new batch are supposed to come in and compete and play at a certain level. That is not happening. But every other team in college football is dealing with the exact same issue. They may not have put as many guys in the NFL as you have, but guess what? They lost guys, whether they're in the NFL or just sitting on the couch at home. They're having to replace them with new people. The concept is exactly the same. So I'm tired of hearing about, well, they're playing like crap because they lost so many. It does not matter. Every team loses guys. You have to replace them. Okay? So replace them and get them to play to a certain level. There are certain mistakes that are being made that are fundamental mistakes that we have not seen while Kirby's been here. That's a fact. That's not Dan's opinion. There are things that are happening that we've never seen before. So fix it. That's why we're paying you $13 million a year, bro. Like, I don't have sympathy. Like, you're making more money than I'll ever make in my entire life in one season. Fix it.
That's kind of my thing, because we hear them talk about depth. It was actually something he talked about today, and he didn't, because somebody asked him, what was it called? You know, he talked about not having winning depth that could win football games in the offseason. That was his number one concern. He came back today and said, no, that's not really something that's bothering us today. He did say that depth is always a concern around college football, and it's not exclusive to him and Georgia. But, you know, if depth is a concern, my question is this just going to be kind of the new normal, or is it something you could do beyond that to kind of fix it? And if it is something you could fix, I have a hard time believing it's going to be a 1 year, one off season fix. Just to me. But he did say he said today that he hasn't had to be able to give the snaps to the players that he usually does, and that's just a direct result of the tight games, as he mentioned. There's tight games, there's close games. They don't have enough Tennessee Techs on the schedule right now to, at least early in the year, to get those extra player snaps. So
this comment right here, Kirby doesn't have the depth that he likes. Well, that's a you problem, not anybody else's problem, because you are 100% in control of your team and your roster makeup, your roster management. And if you didn't do a good job of roster management, that's a you problem. Like, that's where I guess I'm different than everybody else. I don't feel sorry for you. Like, you have an unlimited budget to recruit. Since Kirby has been here, everything he's asked for, he's gotten in spades. He's gotten new facilities. He's got an unlimited budget. Mark Richt used to beg and plead for any type of money, and he never got it. Kirby gets everything he wants. So I don't feel sorry. I don't. I'm a dog fan, and I think so many people think the world's coming to an end, right? It's not. Like, everything that's happening is fixable, Harrison. Everything is fixable, right? I haven't watched the game going, oh shit, there's no way we can fix that. That's not true. I mean, Jeremiah's alluding to the point that in time these guys will be better, and I agree, they will. But don't give me the excuse, well, we had to replace a lot of guys. We had to replace the whole secondary. There are teams in the past that have had to replace their whole secondary. It's your job to make sure that the guys who come up next are ready to play. If they're not ready to play, that's your fault. It's your fault. It's your roster. So I know I'm salty today. I'm tired of the fucking excuses. I just am. Everybody's bickering about this Georgia football team, and everybody's making excuses, this, that, and the other. It's the damn fans. It's the fraternity. It's the parking. I'm so freaking tired of everybody just whining. Like, I'm like this close to just saying I don't even want to podcast anymore and even talk about it anymore. I'm so freaking tired of everybody complaining about everything. Dude, Get your guys, teach them how to play football, go beat somebody's ass. The game's exactly the same as it ever was. The end.
Ooh. Now that was a lot. That was a lot. Yeah, I agree. Don't do that, Dan.
I'm just sick of it, bro.
You just kind of have to do what we do and just pick and choose when you want to go on social media, because right now it is not a fun place to be on, especially when they're not winning 40-0, which they haven't done so far this year against a Power 5 team. But I do think this is a good point. They're still good. Maybe they aren't NFL rookie start. Yeah, and that's the point. You don't have a Jalen Carter. You don't have a Brock Bowers in your roster right now, which obviously, not saying that to draw sympathy. But yeah, that's the thing. And I think this is the conversation that always needs to revolve around, that I think a lot of people forget. We can compare this Georgia team to last Georgia team to the Georgia team before it, Georgia team, before that one, but it doesn't matter, because yes, you may be able to hold them to that standard, but the standard that's going to affect the season is, well, where do they compare to the rest of college football? Because hey, there might be this much of a gap between 2021 Georgia and this current Georgia, but the gap between Georgia and who you think is the best team in college football right now, maybe like that, or maybe like this. Heck, you don't even know. It may be like that, and Georgia has
about to find out.
Time. Yeah, we are about to find out, and there's no better time to transition into that talk than right now. This is, I think, probably the game on the schedule in terms of gonna have a lot of potential questions answered. One of them being, how good is this Georgia team? I think a lot of people in the national media, rightfully or wrongfully, are now wondering, well, shoot, Georgia lost to Alabama. We don't know how good Alabama is. Kind of foolish, in my opinion, if you're saying that. But this is, Dan, we talked about last week. For me, it is, once again, as we call it, I think I said it 2 years ago. 2 years or a year ago. I think it was last year. It was show me time. It's show me time again this weekend. In full transparency, when we get to picks, I have not changed my mind on who I think is going to win this game. I think Texas right now has proven they are the better team. You can say what you want about their schedule. They have dominated their schedule. You got to give them credit for that. They've done it similar to what Georgia did in 2021. Georgia dominated their schedule. It didn't matter who Georgia played that year. Georgia won the game and won it convincingly. So you got to give them credit for that. Strength of schedule may not even be a comparison with what Georgia's run through, but they've beaten everybody they've played. Got to give them that respect. In terms of, and I think that's something Kirby alluded to today. He said there's a lot of similarities in the way they played to what we were in years past. Where do we want to start here? Because to me, and it's going to be cliche, but I think it's simply true. Actually, hold up, because I forgot the angle here that I wanted to hit. And thank you, courtesy Cole Kubelik. Cool stat. Didn't realize this. He said on Twitter today, and I quote, Georgia's the first team playing multiple AP top 5 matchups on the road in the same season since 1996 Florida. I'm sure Dan already knew this and didn't mean me to put in the notes, but I just put in the notes anyway, so I remember it for the show. That Florida team went on to go 12-1 that year, win the SEC East, the Sugar Bowl, and the national title. That was back in the day when you voted on the national title, for folks that didn't know that. Their only loss, FSU, was in the regular season, and they avenged it in that Sugar Bowl that won them the national title. I believe FSU and Tennessee were both of their road games that year, and they won one of the two. So, hey, shout out to Steve Spurrier, who I think, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve Spurrier is one of your favorite coach quotes of all time. Of all time. I thought I saw that, and I was like, okay, we kind of have to throw this in because it is kind of cool. If Georgia splits these two games, the problems go away. You lose to Alabama, you beat Texas. It's all rainbow and roses over here on Georgia's side of the social media spectrum, without a doubt. In my opinion, a lot of the questions go away.
Well, I mean, I think atmosphere that's going to be down there in Austin, just the whole weekend in general, there's going to be a buzz in that town that hasn't been seen in a really long time because of everything that's happening, not just the football game, but everything that's happening. I think it's going to be very difficult for the Dog fans to get in there and take over the stadium like they have in past environments. This is going to probably be. I'm not trying to be. I'm not trying to be the over the top guy, but I think this has a chance to be probably the biggest road game that we've seen Georgia play last 15, 20 years, probably. I cannot I mean, the going to Notre Dame was cool, but the stakes weren't there. Like, Notre Dame was a good team, but I mean, when's the last time we went on the road to play a number one team in a regular season where we've never played inside their stadium before?
I can't think of one.
I don't know that that's ever happened. I mean, because if you think of the way the scheduling works, it just doesn't happen like that. So we're going on the road to play a number one team in a stadium that we've never played in before. That's
a new
incredible.
team in the conference too.
Yeah,
well.
like there's just a lot that's going into it. And, one of my biggest complaints or observations from the Alabama game was I didn't feel like Georgia matched the intensity that Alabama had to start that football game. I don't think that's a stretch. I think that's pretty much a fact, right? Georgia better be ready to play. If Georgia comes out flat, this could get ugly. And I think the biggest part for me, the area that I'm focusing on the most is Texas's passing game versus Georgia's secondary. Georgia's secondary has not been good. They have blown assignments. They have not covered well. They've got a lot of pass interferences. And Quinn Ewers, hell, even Arch Manning, even if something were to happen to Quinn, it's not like they're not really falling off the wagon there. But Quinn Ewers has the ability to absolutely carve your ass up. 100% he does. And he can run. He's mobile. Like he can move. And what is the one thing, Harrison, that has absolutely killed this Georgia football team in years past?
Mobile quarterbacks.
Mobile quarterback. Now, he's not Jalen Milroe. He's not that. But he's good enough to make a play with his feet. He's a Jackson Dart, well, Jackson Dart's probably not even a fair comparison, but because Jackson Dart's kind of special that way. But that could be a real problem for Georgia. Or maybe it's not going to be a problem at all. Maybe how many times have we come on this show and talked about Georgia just rises to the level of their opponent? And was it last year? Every single time that Georgia was threatened, they beat the shit out of the team that they were threatened by.
That was 2 years ago.
Yeah,
2 years ago.
It was every time somebody's like, "Oh my God, you got to play Tennessee," beat their ass. Like, "Oh my God, you got to play Ole Miss." No, it was last year because Ole Miss. They're like, "Oh my God, you got to play Ole Miss," and we drugged the shit out of Ole Miss. With Florida, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. It's just every time Georgia was threatened, they just rose to the game. Like they would play like dog mess against Vanderbilt, and then all of a sudden, here comes Ole Miss, and we just beat them by 40. So we haven't seen that team show up yet, but I believe it's in there.
It's somewhere.
It's somewhere.
It's somewhere. There are guys in that locker room that played in that Ole Miss game last year. Shoot, there's some guys in there that maybe saw special team snaps 2 years ago and maybe that Tennessee game. But that's the thing, Dan. That's my thing in terms of picking this game. We're at the point now, it's kind of like the pre-national championship era of Georgia under Kirby Smart, where I just got to see one go down in terms of, hey, they got to win this big game before I feel ultra confident in saying, hey, they're going to go out and they're going to go all the way. They have been a little bit inconsistent. We haven't seen their best football, and that's what makes it tough in terms of picking them to win is we don't know what Georgia looks like at their best because we haven't seen it. We've seen Texas at what we think is probably one of their best, if not their best performances. They've had 2 blowout wins, 2 dominant wins over ranked teams at the time they played them. I know Michigan's not as good as I mean, it's no surprise to us that Michigan hasn't been as good as they were last year. That's no surprise to us in this program.
23 super seniors.
Yeah.
And they all played.
Yeah. And Michigan doesn't recruit at the level that an Alabama or Georgia or Texas does. Not really shocked to this program that they've fallen off. But anyways, that's the thing. We've seen Texas at their best this year. They've beaten everybody pretty handedly, no matter what jersey, what logo's on that other helmet. Can't really say the same about Georgia. Now, getting into the matchups real quick. In terms of this game, I like that you went with Quinn Ewers. I think obviously Ewers versus Beck, it's quarterback versus quarterback. There's a lot of similarities in between the two in terms of when they're at their best. They can help you win ball games. They can win you some ball games. But that's kind of the deal here. Is I really think you said Quinn Ewers versus Georgia secondary, which I love that matchup because obviously Georgia secondary is coming off a performance in which they got some questions. I want to see Georgia's receivers take over a game that we haven't seen like we haven't seen before. Texas has patched up their secondary. Texas had one of the worst pass defenses in the country last year. They haven't shown signs of doing that so far. Granted, they haven't played anybody that can challenge them maybe as vertically as Georgia can, potentially could. So this is a big test for them as well. Can Georgia do that? Can Georgia play well on the road? Carson Beck hasn't played his best football game so far on the road in his career. Struggled out of the gate versus Alabama. Now, whether that's all on him, obviously you go watch the tape and you say, no, it's not. But they need Carson Beck to be at his very best from snap one. Because it takes just one or two mistakes, as we've seen, one or two drop passes from his wideouts, and things could get ugly really quick. That's what I'm kind of looking for right now. And again, the loss of Colby Young, the football player, does loom a little bit in games like this. I saw it loom a little bit at Mississippi State on their first, I think, attempt in the red zone. Georgia got into the red zone eventually, but it's like, man, they don't have that jump ball guy. The ball that Carson threw in the back of the end zone to Dylan Bell is probably one that usually goes to Colby Young if he's on the field. The interception he threw in the red zone, probably one that he'd maybe give Colby Young a chance if he was on the field there. Well, but that's the thing. Georgia I need to see a guy pop out. We've yet to see it yet. Arian Smith has been kind of the guy they're going to, but even then, Arian Smith has his bad plays, and mainly it's been drops.
We haven't seen a home run yet. The Dogs haven't hit a home run all year. Am I wrong? Or
other than that Dylan Bell 75-yarder, 74-yarder for Bama, if that's what you're referring to, in terms of deep balls. I mean, they had, remember the game, the one that gave Georgia lead versus Alabama in the end. 60 yards.
Okay, well then they have. Okay, then I'm mistaken.
But not consistently.
Right. You see these other teams, they hit 3 or 4 in a game where they're taking the top off. They're hitting that home run ball. Georgia just really doesn't put pressure on people like that, and that's one of the things. And in the Alabama game, they did take shots, right? And that was something that we wanted to see. But the other part of that too is, are we missing Del McGee? Because our running game has been okay. And I think right when it happened, when they called that long touchdown run for ETN back, I'm like, this is not good, right? But also the perception is that he didn't have a good game. I was listening to one of the pundits, national pundits, talk about ETN like he could never get going. I'm like, bro, he had a long time. I got hiccups all of a sudden. He got a long touchdown run called back. And it's like, he's a good running back, but we need to have a game where we just run it down somebody's throat. And that's what I thought was going to happen against Mississippi State. They were the worst run defense in the SEC. Then why the hell didn't we try to run it? And we threw the ball 50-something times. Like, why? Just run. If they're the worst run defense in the SEC, I almost said NFL. If they're the worst run defense in the SEC, then run it down their damn throat. Run it down their damn throat.
I think you probably saw. I mean, Georgia just really couldn't get the run game going outside of the.
Why?
That's the question. I don't know. I have no clue. You return. How many starters did they return? Ernest Green, Dylan Feltrout started games last year. Your only really new starter, obviously, other than Michael Morris, is Jared Wilson.
And Wilson didn't play. Bobo did.
Yeah.
Bobo hasn't been bad. Like I'm not putting this.
Bobo's been fine, but still, it's not even the new guys that you could say are the problem. they have returning starters not playing good football, playing some of the worst football of their career.
I
Up for
don't
Georgia.
understand why we can't run the ball.
It's mind-boggling.
It's like a lack of effort or something, or like a lack of will, or I'm not. I just it's and I know this is so funny coming from me because I'm the guy that wanted to throw it when we used to run it all the time. But like now I'm so angry that we can't run the ball. Like line up, run it down the throat. You have an elite back. He's got great vision. We've seen him. Just
He
give the
make
guy
people miss.
some room. Give the guy some room. I don't know. Like if we can't run the ball against Texas, I don't think it's going to go well for us.
I think it's gonna. I mean, yeah, you'll have to get kind of that same Bama performance in terms of, hey, you're just gonna have to throw the piss out of the football. You're gonna have to score points at a really high rate, really high clip. Points
You're going
in
to have
bunches.
to score to beat Texas.
Yeah, I don't see this.
You're
game
not winning
being,
this 10-7. There's
yeah,
no
I don't see
fucking
this.
way.
I don't see this being in the low 20s. I see this being in the high 30s, maybe even 40s in terms of a ball game.
This is not going to be a comfortable game either.
Yeah, you're gonna be sweating this one out. Either you're gonna be sweating this one out, or it's gonna be off at halftime. I think that's probably the way this one plays out. I would be shocked if Georgia's the one doing the ass whooping, just with kind of the way things have gone sometime, this year. But that isn't to say they can't do it. We just haven't seen that yet in terms of a complete performance. I think everybody hopes it is in the books, or that is in the cards. But for me, Dan, in terms of predictions, I think Texas probably wins this one. I'm going to say I think it's probably going to be by 2 scores. I think maybe 10 points is where they pull this one out. That's my early standing on this. Like we said, they've beaten everybody, no matter what logo's on their jersey or on their helmet. They've done it. When you see teams like that, which I don't want to say don't come along very often because we've seen it in recent years with Georgia. There's just a lot of similarities in the way they beat teams this year. They've beaten teams this year to what Georgia did in 21 and even 22. I'm gonna lean Texas this one, and simply it's for the reason I think it's just based on the way the season's gone. I just don't know if Georgia has what it takes at least in this point of the season to pull a game out like this on the road. Now I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I don't know where Dan's standing on this game. We haven't talked about where he thinks about it, so I'm gonna kick it over to you.
I don't think you're the way that you're feeling about the game. I don't think it's wrong. Like I think there is a very realistic scenario in which Georgia loses this football game. I don't think that's crazy at all. But if you went back a couple years ago, before we started winning the national titles, Georgia used to be in a situation where you hoped that they could win football games. And Georgia was supposed to take that next step to where it doesn't matter what the game is. Georgia's supposed to, like, I don't even know how to put this into words. There's not a game that Georgia can play anymore where I hope they can win. Georgia absolutely can win this football game. Georgia has the talent. Georgia is the big bad dog. They are. They are. Now, granted, we piss our pants every time we play in Tuscaloosa. That's a fact. Every time we say that we just don't play well. I mean, we're like 1 in like 400 against them. Listen, if you come on here to tell me that Bama owns us, no shit. Okay, no kidding. I got you. But Texas doesn't own us. Texas doesn't own us. They've never, they beat us in the game that we didn't care about playing, but they don't own us. So, what's my favorite line, Harrison? If you're scared, get a dog. Okay. Georgia's going to go in there. They have an opportunity to win this football game. They have the talent to win this football game. I believe we have the better head coach. I believe we have better talent across the board. Have we played as well as they have all year long? No, absolutely not. But this isn't their whole resume versus our whole resume. It's one Saturday in October that you have to go on the road and play a game. Every single one of those Georgia guys, when they're interviewed, talk about they prefer to play on the road than they do at home. They enjoy being on the road because they're with their guys. It's isolated. You're away from everything. You're staying in a hotel room. It's the road game atmosphere. They love it. They went on game day last year, and across the board, they said we love playing on the road. We love going into a stadium and shutting the other crowd up. I don't remember who said that. Was it? It was one of the linebackers, I think. He was like, we love shutting up another team. So for that reason, I mean, Georgia's going to win this football game. I think they have the ability to win this football game. I believe it. I am not going to let that negativity crawl into my head. Georgia's going to go in there. They're going to find a way to get it done against all odds. Knock off the number one team in the world. Woo! Go get them, dogs.
I think this might be one of the first times that we've split on a Georgia prediction.
You've never picked against them.
Yeah, I haven't picked against them, and I'm making history by doing that now. They also haven't been an underdog in 50 games, which is crazy to think about the run they've been on. Dan, I'm going to leave you with this. Actually, maybe not leave it with you. I might give you a chance to respond. I posted this over on the dog vent, and they got some folks barking over there. So I'm going to play it on here. This is Emmanuel Acha on Fox following Texas's 34-3 win over Oklahoma.
Let me button up my jacket for this professional take.
Okay, all right. Let's get out of the way, Coach.
Yeah. Texas showed America what a number one team in football is supposed to look like. Quinn Ewers, starting quarterback, did not have a great day. It did not matter. You still beat your rival at a neutral site by over 30 points. Defense, stout. Receivers, stout. Running game, stout. And your quarterback came back from injury, did not play great, and you still dominated. Your leading receiver, Isaiah Bond, didn't even show up, and you still dominated. So what I will say is bring Georgia on, and those dreams too will come to die. Bring Florida on, and whatever dreams are left will come to die. Longhorn fans should feel very good about this season because Texas played a C game and still won by 30 points. Imagine if they play an A game.
Dan, that has people fired up.
He has every right to feel that way. He has every right to feel that way. They have put on tape a better product than Georgia has. However, it doesn't matter because Georgia has been battle tested. Georgia has won. Georgia has the talent. Georgia has the coach. Georgia, the days of hoping and praying that we can match up with somebody are over. Georgia is in that top seat. They are the standard. They are what everybody else wants to be. And if that's true, then go win the football game.
Roll the ball out, blow the whistle. I'm sorry, Stoddard, but we only give honest predictions over here. It's just the way I'm feeling. Prove me wrong. Anyways, folks, that will wrap it up for episode 129 of the Top Dog Talk podcast. That's Dan Kiley. He's rolling with your dogs. So, hey, instead of blowing up my mentions, if you want to, with hating on me because I picked Georgia or picked Texas, go follow Dan and go give him some love over every time. Every time. It's the reverse. I hope so. It would be much
going
better.
To the game with all his damn Texas family. He's a closet Texas fan.
He
just proved it today. Horns down, go Dogs.
I am bringing a Georgia fan with us, so I'm not outnumbered. But anyways, folks, that will wrap it up for episode 129. We will be back here next week with another Just Top Dog Talk. Wishing the dogs, everybody who's going to Austin, safe travels. It's going to be an electric weekend over there. I did see Good Morning America is going to be in town the same weekend, which is insane, considering everything they have all.
I got Harrison's football helmet up there. It's on the shelf.
Heck yeah. Let's go. It took enough time. It took Robert over there on the DG podcast calling him out for it. Dan, I'm hitting your cue.
Boys.